Hello, hello. I'm Abhinav Jindal, your host, and welcome back to It's Wednesday, That's Why, a podcast made to inspire people by understanding why people do what they do, what drives them, what motivates them, and in hope that stories can inspire you because there's so much to learn from stories. Today, our guest today is a writer, is a publishing coach, is the founder of Trivium Writing Inc. Everyone, please meet Leandre Laroche. Hi, man. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. It's such a pleasure. Can you tell us more about what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, by trade, I'm a writer. So, I studied English literature, professional writing. And since I was about 15 years old, I took the writing craft very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So, writing my first book around age of 15. So, I was
Yeah.
always very passionate about the writing craft. And so, today with my business, I took this passion for the craft to another level, which is where I'm helping other people understand that craft and utilize it in their business. So mostly, writing nonfiction books that help to grow their business, content that helps them generate new business, and so a lot of what I do has to do with really understanding writing from
Yeah.
that practical perspective for business.
That's amazing. How did you find this craft of yours?
Yeah, so frankly, when I first started, when I was in high school, and I was writing in French because I grew up in a French-speaking area in Quebec. It was really just something that I wanted to do as a teenager, and that's where I found the passion. But where I found the mastery was when I started, studying. When I went to college and I started helping other people with their essays, and there was especially the fact that I was writing in French, but I always wanted to write in English, which is what I do now.
Mm-hmm.
And coming from a second language, I had to understand the English language and English grammar very deeply at a level that a lot of people don't. And so getting that understanding for myself gave me this perspective into the language and into writing that I could then share with other people. Um, but the reason I started this business specifically is that when I was in university, I worked as a writing assistant, and I worked with people in all disciplines: computer science,
Yeah.
engineering, the arts, human resources, and I saw they all had the same sorts of struggles with writing.
Mm-hmm.
And it in most cases was simply that it hadn't been explained to them in a way that actually made sense.
Yes.
And there was one student in particular. She was a computer science grad student from Pakistan, and her supervisor had sent her to the writing center because she said that her writing was so bad, it was disrespectful to the reader. And so we worked together, and I realized that the way that I tutored her wouldn't work because her mind just like works differently as a computer science
Mm-hmm.
student. And so I started developing new methods, new frameworks, new ways of thinking about writing, and I started seeing results for her. So I thought, well, no, I must be onto something. And so I tested that out on more and more students, and the results were just amazing.
Yeah.
And that's what prompted me. I saw the impact this could have on people. So I thought, let's try to impact as many people as possible with these frameworks.
The first time we met, you started talking about language as Lego blocks, and that
Yes.
blew me away because I'm like, it's one thing to understand the language, but it's another thing to look at a language as Lego blocks. Can you tell more about that?
Yeah, for sure. So the idea of the Lego blocks is I came up working with that student that I was just mentioning, and the reason I came up with this was that well, when you look at language and you're writing something for practical purposes, like a business report or like an email or something like that, At the end of the day, there's only so many things that you can do, right? You can explain something, you can try to persuade, you can tell a story, or you can describe. And the way that you do that is by answering questions,
Yeah.
fundamentally, like what, why, where, who. And all these questions, which in my method, these are the Lego blocks. You put them together. That's what you do with writing. You answer questions. These questions are the Lego blocks. You put them together, and that creates writing. And the reason I came up with this was that a lot of the time when you're taught writing in school, it's taught from a perspective that's very kind of obscure. Whereas if you're a more like techie person, if you're like in the sciences, you're in the STEM field, none of that stuff resonates with you.
Yeah.
But the Lego blocks is like, it's just like geometry, and then I added like some, equations to that, and then it just kind of makes sense to people that think this way. And so that's why the method's been so useful. So so the Lego blocks are really at the core of the method, and they make it really easy to understand what a sentence is, because most people, if I ask them to deconstruct a sentence, they can't. But that's because the way that they've been taught to look at a sentence is way too complicated. So the Lego blocks make it very simple.
What makes you so passionate about writing?
I think it's because with writing, you have a chance to share knowledge in a way that you can't with speaking, because you have to really take the time to organize your ideas and make them sound good and make them clear. And so whenever you write, so for example, if you share wisdom with me, right now, it's one thing, it's going to be great. It's going to be even better if you write it down and put it into something like a blog post or a book or anything like that, because because then it's more organized, it's more thought through, and also, good writing is good editing. So having edited that, it's easier to consume. So I mean, writing is a very old art form. And there's just so much knowledge that has passed through the generations. Like, why are we still able to read Seneca? Well, because of writing. Yeah. We still have books. We can read all these like Stoic philosophers, which is, the oral tradition is great, but it's just not the same.
Yeah. What are some challenges you faced, or you may be facing or have faced? I would like to know one incident where you faced a challenge tutoring someone about language.
Yeah, so a lot of the time, I think, so this goes back to my days in university. Today I work with some non-native English speakers, but most of my clients are native English speakers. But I remember when I was tutoring people, what could be very difficult would be when somebody comes from a language or a culture that is so different from English. For example, like people from China. Because language shapes the way that you think and the kind of like logic that you use and like how you get to like conclusions. It can be very difficult as like two human beings if I'm trying to tutor you to write in such a way that you'll have a compelling argument in writing, because the way that we make arguments in the English language is somewhat unique to the English language, and perhaps there are groups of languages that operate the same way in terms of how you make arguments.
Yeah.
And so if you're very new to the English language, and you're coming from a culture that's very different, then it can be extremely challenging to teach how to get to, how to create these arguments, because it's a whole different container. So so that could be quite challenging when tutoring.
So what drove you to overcome that challenge and say, I'm gonna overcome it, I'm gonna find a solution?
Well, I mean, what I realized at the Writing Center, and this was partly, it goes back to what I was saying about the student that really pushed me to create that methodology, I just knew that there's no getting around writing. So these students were struggling with writing some business report or like marketing assignment or their thesis. And I knew that this was a great opportunity for me to teach them something that would serve them all their whole life. So it's like if I overcame that challenge, like I knew that their life would be significantly better for like a very long period of time, because you need writing to get the degree, but once you get the degree, you got to go in the workplace and there's more writing to do. So that's really what drove me.
And why was helping those people become better in writing important to you? Like,
Well, I strongly believe that writing is that skill that'll make you more successful. I certainly experienced that for myself, so I wish that for other people. And also, I mean, I'm aware that communication is also the way that you create innovation and the way that you impact the world. If you have the most brilliant scientist who creates innovation but cannot communicate it, cannot get funding for it, or cannot market that innovation, then that innovation goes to waste, right? So I was aware that the people that I was working with, by helping them improve their communication skills through writing, they would be, they would contribute to the world in their own way, and I would be able to contribute to them contributing to the world by helping them be more successful and communicate better what it is that they do.
and what emotion does that enlight inside of you, helping them accomplish something?
I'd say it's there's definitely joy, and I don't know if that's really an emotion, but like it definitely brings a lot of fulfillment, and I'd say it's satisfaction. It's knowing that you've successfully completed something, especially once you've done something very, very hard. Like for example, when I was working with that student, when the thesis was completed, I definitely had a great sense of satisfaction, and also a sense of being stronger, because every time you do something harder, then that there's so many other things that you didn't think you could do, that now you can do because you've done that.
Yeah. How was it like when you found your passion? Like when you found, writing is that moment. When was that realization?
Yeah, so it was around 15 years old. I was still in high school, and back then, my first passion actually was music. I started playing the guitar. I took lessons, and but somehow I just knew it wasn't going to be like what I would like devote my life to. Like I didn't see myself going pro with it. But then I found writing, and I remember like back in those days, it's like I had a sort of like very normal childhood. I like, grew up in a small town. There wasn't a whole lot to do. Where my parents were kind of strict in terms. It's like I couldn't like spend the whole day like playing video games. So I remember being bored a lot, and remembering like, oh, like what's the whole point of like being here, right? Because like I'm so bored, and like I was looking for like meaning, and then I found writing, and then I remember like it happened literally overnight. It's like one day I was bored, and then the other day I was like, oh, there's not enough time in the day, and that's been like this ever since. Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that is like a real breakthrough.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Like,
Yeah.
I find interest in something slowly, and sometimes it's all of a sudden. But I've never seen someone just like go overnight and like change. Okay,
Yeah.
tomorrow I'm gonna write all day.
Yeah, well, it just happened overnight, and I would say like, so that was for the passion, and then the sort of like mastery or like the passion for like the technical aspect came like over the years, especially as I learned English and as I dabbled into like different types of writing. But yeah, the passion for writing, it just like happens like bam.
Wow. We're all discussing why, and it's a very interesting topic because it's so important to find why we do stuff. Because when we know our why, there's no more snooze button.
Mm-hmm.
We're like constantly like you found your passion with writing, and you're like, okay, I don't have time anymore because I'm so involved with it. And it's a random journey from my past interviews and all the people I've asked, just like, that there's no correct formula to define the why, and yet people, when they keep trying, eventually they find the why. And we don't know as humans how long does it take to find our
Mm-hmm.
why. It's like, okay, I found my why at 5 years, I found my why at 15 years. Some people find their why at 70 years or
Mm-hmm.
80 years. But I think the earlier you start working on it and start asking those questions, the simpler it becomes and the faster the answers you will get. Is there any tip you would want to share with the audience that can help them find their why and locate their passion?
Yeah, I think there's really one thing that I think is useful when it comes to finding the why, and I think it's simply curiosity and open-mindedness. Um, yeah,
That's amazing. I agree 100%
yeah,
with you.
because I mean, I was lucky. I didn't find it like it found me. I don't necessarily think this is like that for everybody, and like it found me like pretty early on, so I didn't have to like go through like an extensive journey. But I think, one thing that I advised to someone who had reached out to me when it came to like writing and like expressing herself and whatnot, what I advised was to look at the different interests that you have and looking at the intersection. So, for example, like for me, it would be, outside of writing, it'd be business, politics, and personal development. These are the things that like I geek out
Yeah.
about. And so, what is it about these three things? What's the common denominator? If I ask myself this question, that can put me on the journey to like finding my why, finding my passion. There's something about these things that draws me. So, what is that thing? Otherwise, it's curiosity, open-mindedness, exploring new things, even if you think you're not gonna like them.
Yeah.
Spending time with people. I think all of these things really, really help because I think at the end of the day, like you don't find your why, like your why finds you, and so you just have to hang out in places where
Yes.
your why
Um,
can find you.
Over time, I've observed that when someone is born, they already have their life set out for themselves. Like it's kind of fixed. You go to school, you go get a degree, you go find a job or do something else, and you start your life, and you carry on with that. And so many times, for people, and especially for young people, the next step is a foregone conclusion. It's like pre-decided that, oh my God, a child is born in my house, it's gonna be a doctor. So that child may or may not want to be a doctor, but that in their entire life they've heard that, oh, they're gonna be a doctor one day. So when they go out and start applying for colleges and universities, they're like, oh, I want to get a medical degree because I'm destined to be a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to those people, it may or may not be their passion. Um, how can they be open minded and be ready to explore more options and come out of their sort of limited mindset? And do you have anything to say on that?
Um, right. So you're asking about how they can get out of that mindset, or how can they work
How,
with
how
it?
can they start finding their why? Because they're like, okay, I'm supposed to do this thing, but if there's other things I want to do, like, I can't just do that because,
Yeah, for
you
sure. I
know,
mean, It's funny you mentioned that because I kind of had the opposite experience where my parents did not push anything at all. In fact, I wonder at one point like if there was anything they wanted to do because I think like every parent kind of want their child to like do one thing or another, but turns out they just wanted me to be happy. So um,
Hey, can we pause for a second? Because this is a very interesting point you brought up. Because I think as parents, it's very important to, give the right information to their kids. And sometimes parents have expectations from the kids, which nothing wrong with that. But sometimes those expectations can turn into what is also known as peer pressure,
yeah,
which is then being enforced upon the kids instead of encouraging them or inspiring them. And you said a funny, like you shared your story as your parents didn't
hmm
expect, or even if they expected, maybe they never brought it out to you.
yeah.
Um, as a child, how did that make you feel? And do you have any tip for parents or people who can become parents on that
Yeah,
topic?
for sure. I mean, I think so. It felt kind of like being like a like blank canvas, if you will, because it's like growing up, I never felt like there was something expected of that, like that there was an expectation I would become one thing in particular. So I kind of felt free to like explore things. Um, I think if you're a parent, the best thing you can do is, and that's actually not something my parents did, but I think the best thing you can do is have your child explore different sports and hobbies and activities and like just have them try stuff and see what they like, and then they can double down on what they like.
Yeah.
My parents didn't do that, but I did some of that on my own. I started like music. I started writing. I mean, I guess I'm lucky. It just took like two things to like find what I really liked. But I think for a lot of people, it's going to take more than that. So I think too, as a parent, it's important to understand that there is more than if you the best way to love your child is to want them to do what will truly make them fulfill professionally. So I know a lot of parents, like the reason like a lot of these kids are set up, like professionally, is because their parents want them to, do well, like financially, professionally,
Yeah.
have like good status. So that's why they want them to have like certain professions. Um, you know, the world has changed a lot since the past 30 years, and I think if you like something, you can make it work on your own terms. And there's so many opportunities today, like with the internet and like new technologies. So I don't believe that it is true anymore that following your passion, even if it's like in the arts or something like that, will keep you poor. Now, of course, it's like you need to be driven and you need to have, like good social skills. And, if you're going to do like the entrepreneurial journey, you have to like have like business fundamentals. But,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I've talked about this with friends a lot. I took English literature. And when I graduated, I was a lot more employable than a lot of people that had like taken like very safe degrees, like business degrees. And the reason is it's really not the degree that makes the most difference. It's what you do with it. It's
Yes.
you. It's your temperament. It's your drive. It's your work ethic. It's your initiative. So I think you know if you want your child to be successful, teach them to be that kind of person who would be successful no matter what degree they take, rather than
Amazing.
rather
Yes.
than than make
Yes.
them the kid that will be quote unquote successful because they took the right degree but they're miserable, because that's not
Yes.
success.
That's yes.
Yeah,
That's so true. That's amazing. And as Tony Robbins says, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
what is the number one skill set, according to you, that an entrepreneur should have?
Communication for sure. And especially these days, writing. But writing is a form of communication. communication is by far the most important skill. I mean, you can see that, just in the ways, sometimes we look at like businesses, or like we hear about these like frauds and scams and all these things, and you wonder like, how do people like pull that off? It's like, it's really kind of amazing. And the reason they're able to do that is because of they have good communication.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, shouldn't do that, but that just goes to show that even if you don't have anything else, communication can like still work. So that's just how powerful it is. So now, if you have talent, if you have skills and work ethic, and then on top of it you have communication, then you're really unstoppable.
Yeah. That is true. That is so true. I read a quote somewhere, I don't remember exactly, somewhere on social media for sure, which said, people will give you business just because you're nice.
Yeah.
But combine that being nice with a skill set that solves a problem, and you've got a winning business formula.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's cool, man. Thank you so much for being here today.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure.
Yes, and be limitless today.
Sorry?
Be limitless today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye, guys. I'll see you next Wednesday.